Hi, I'm Craig Phillips. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build this wood-fired pizza oven with a beautiful cast iron door, lots of storage space underneath for your wood, and the structure is built in an arch shape with a square chimney like this, a full gatherer inside going through a flue, and a cap on the top. Now, the materials and tools you're going to require to build your pizza oven are fireline bricks, engineering bricks, both powdered and pre-mixed fireproof mortar, sand, a tape measure, spirit levels, a bricklaying trowel, a lump hammer and a bolster for cutting the bricks, and also it helps if you have a grinder, different size pointing trowels, a plastering hawk and a plastering trowel, shovels and a wheelbarrow. So when I'm building a solid structure like this one, but quite small, I always prefer to lay the first couple of courses the day before so they're completely solid and dry. Or else, when I'm trying to build up both sides here and I'm moving bricks and I'm moving mortar, I end up catching them with my feet or the spirit level and all of a sudden knocking them bottom ones out. And that's what you don't want to do, because of course it's very important to get all the corners perfectly level. But they're now nice and solid, so I can quickly lay my bricks right the way around. So to lay a really good brick, you want to curl your cement over like this, creating a nice little round circular shape like that, and then you drop her into position and just using the edge of your trowel, put that down into position. If you've never laid bricks before, it's worthwhile spending a good 10 minutes, 20 minutes just doing a little practice run with your mortar on a couple of scrap bricks before you start trying to build your main structure. There we go. So that there is probably standing about 20 millimeters high. There's lots of little cavities in it that I'm creating like this with the edge of the trowel, and then I'll place my first brick, which of course has a nice smooth edge on one side and the two sides here. This back side is the manufactured rougher side, so that always stays on the inside. I'm placing it down just nice and gently on here, lining it up with my corners here and here, and then I'm just going to gently give it a tap with the edge of my trowel. You'll start to see the mortar coming out of the edge. Then you take your spirit level, you offer it up against the bottom one. That's why I wanted these ones to be relatively set. I'll do the same again on this outside edge here. When I'm happy with that, I know I can continue building. So the perf here, you only want it to be about 10 millimeters thick, making sure it's level that way as well. I'm going to place on here, of course it's going to be there. I need to get it level here, level there, and of course level across the top, but I want the mortar to be filled in here. So I take this brick, I get a small amount off here, again turning it over, making it nice and sticky, and then I place it on there like this, and give it a little tap down, and that way it's going to fill that gap there. I can fill the inside in a moment, and if I'm holding it upright like this all the time, because it will slip off, I slowly place that against that brick. I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on here because I don't want to knock that away, but I do want that to bond, so I'll gently tap it. You can see the mortar starting to ooze out a little bit. Tap it down. These particular engineering bricks do have holes in them, so the mortar's starting to push its way up when I tap down along the top, and that's helping grabbing it and keeping it into position. Check that I'm level enough on the top. Then I want to check my sides, and I'm flush and level here, and again on the very front, flush and level. Now, this time we're going to be connecting there. So again, I get a little bit more of my mortar. Just pat it down, cut off any excessive. I'd probably say that is about probably 12 to 14 millimeters thick on there. And then again, I'm placing it into position. A little bit of pressure on this one because I don't want to move it. Remember, my mortar still is a little bit wet under there. Just tapping it down, striking it off, what you're not going to use. Because the main aim is to always try to keep the face of these bricks as clean as possible. It can be cleaned up afterwards, but you don't want to be making more work for yourself. So the key is to take your time now, get your spirit level perfectly level on there. Again, at any point you can double check that they are keeping flush with this brick and the lower bricks by putting your spirit level diagonally here. And when you're happy with that, you can continue along the course. You can fill in them gaps in between them once they get a little bit more sturdier. This time I'm going to put a little bit of mortar on the edge of that brick, pull that one in. Whenever you're getting a couple of courses up, always checking that your two outside edges are perfectly level. You can get a long straight edge. This is a 6-foot one. I'm just double checking from corner to corner. Yeah, we're perfect on there. Same again, corner to corner. Yes, perfect again on there, which is good. So now I'm 4 courses up here, I can start thinking about the actual pointing. Most of it doesn't need filling in because we've got that with the bed of mortar that we've put on, and we tap the brick down and it's oozed out the side. We've either trimmed it off or scooped it back up. But the odd little areas like this here, you're going to get some cavities. So we want to grab a small piece on there and just place it in like that. We don't have to worry about it looking neat at the moment. It's just about filling in that cavity. You don't want to get very much on the brick, of course, trying to keep that as clean as possible, but just filling in any little gaps. And I'm using my normal trowel, a pointing trowel, and just pressing it in on the surface. Once this is bit, it starts to dry off, I'm going to come back later and actually point it all up. But the main thing is getting them gaps just filled for now. Now for these type of structures, there's usually a couple of different types of pointing methods you can use. One is a weather struck one, where you take the edge of your pointing trowel, you press in on the underside of this top brick here, and you strike the mortar like this. And what that's doing is it's smoothing it off to make it waterproof, and any rain on the outside, of course, would hit the side of the brick, come down, drip into that, and then drip off the face of the brick and not actually absorb into it. So it's flush to the top of this brick, and then it's cut in a little bit at the top of that one. And that one is called a weather struck. Quite often see it on the side of houses and things like that. Or you can have a bucket handle one, which you get a tool, and it's a kind of a more of a half moon round shape here. And that way we run into it like this. So again, we're pushing the mortar in that little bit deeper. We're making it nice and smooth, so it is waterproof. but aesthetically we're making it all look the same way. So it's just going to the top of this brick and also the bottom of that brick, and it's creating that concaved kind of round shape in there. And this one's called the bucket handle. And then once this is dry, you just take your brush and brush over the face of the brickwork, take off all them little edges of mortar off there. If you do get any stubborn bits of cement on the brick, it's wise to try and clean them up now. Of course, once they're dry, it's going to be a little bit harder. So as you can see, start at the bottom. I've come up at 8 courses, which is a double skin, solid one, right the way around all 3 sides of it. And then the 9th and the 10th course, I've put a single skin on the outside face of it. The reason being, I'm now at a point now where I need to bridge across with some lintels in here. So I only need to brick up this side along here and here and the back. And then my lintels, they're concrete precast ones. They're going to sit on here and they're actually going to come forward. So what I need to do next is cut a couple of pieces of steel which will sit on here, take the lintels sitting into place there, and then also the front steel will hold the facing brick that bridges across the front there to give you that storage space below your pizza oven. So now I'm about to put these steels on. I'm putting a small bed of mortar on both sides, nice and thin, just about 5mm thick. And then I'm going to take my first steel lintel, which is going to sit on here. These are engineering bricks, so they are good for taking an impact load on top of them. Just setting that just about 10mm behind the face of that brick, so I can still get some mortar in there and point it up. Check my spirit level on here. It's a piece of angle line I'm using, that's perfect. I'm happy with that one there in the front, which I'm going to be laying facing brick across here, and that'll continue across there. However, these ones at the back, which is now going to be that way up, so the lintel will actually sit on this piece. So if I lower that down here, and I'm putting it back to back with that one. It's sitting on top of the brick, of course, about 100-110mm each side. A gentle little tap. We know that front one's level, so I'm just going to tap this one and just check it with my hand to make sure it's flush on that side. And yeah, that is. Again, we don't really need a gap in them, just nudging that back. Right then, now I'm ready to get my mortar and start fitting the concrete lintels. I'm going to put the first one across here. They're 140mm wide by 100mm deep. So they will hang over here, but of course they're going to be sitting on this back double skin of brickwork and then onto this steel here. So I'm going to lie this right on top of here, almost butt up to that brickwork. Now, again, the width that I've set this out, like I mentioned earlier in my plans, this is to fit my lintels that are 145mm wide, these, by the time they're butted up, to fit so many in here and bridge across this gap to give me a nice solid top to this kind of underspace, and also a base, of course, to the oven. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 7 of these lintels have landed now. They're 1200mm in length, 100mm deep and 140mm wide, and they're sat on flat, so they're standing up 100mm. And as you can see now, this second course of brick that I've put in is standing proud around about 45-50mm. So all I've got to do now is build a course along the back. This then will act as a retainer, and I'm going to leave this to dry overnight, so these courses here are nice and dry by the morning. Then I'm going to mix up a really strong concrete mix with a fire line cement mixed in with it and it's going to be screeded over the top of this and levelled out to this brickwork. So now I've laid my last course of bricks around the top there, standing proud of the concrete lintel. So I've got a little bit of mortar left here. I have added a little bit of the Fireline cement in with this, which will make it go off a little bit quicker and of course make it stronger for any heat. And I'm just backing up behind these here just to give it a little bit of strength, because tomorrow when it's fully dry I will be dropping my concrete mix in here. But this certainly will shore the back up. This little row along here, if you look closely on that, it's not a course of bricks. It's actually again some of the block paviers that I had left over from doing my front drive. They're only 50 millimeters thick, so sitting on top of this lintel actually brings it up the same height as my brick for me. So it acts as a former to hold all this into place when I concrete it tomorrow. So the brickwork I did yesterday is now dry, likewise with the concrete precast lintels. So my next stage in here, I'm going to mix a nice lean concrete using some fireproof cement and spread this all the way across here, tamper it all down, make it nice and level, and then leave that to set. I've got 4 tubs of ballast here, which is a granite and also a sharp sand already all mixed together. Pebbles and all sorts in there to really stiffen it up. And then I've got 1 full bucket of the fireproof cement. Now I'll leave that to mix up for about 5 or 10 minutes, put it in my wheelbarrow, take it round and start to lay it. Now if you don't happen to have a concrete mixer or a cement mixer at home, of course you can mix it up by hand. If you check out one of our other videos on a barbecue build, you see me make up some concrete the same as this by hand and lay the foundations for the barbecue, and I also mix up some mortar ready to lay the bricks by hand. So this concrete is probably about 55, 60 millimeters thick now. And I'm just using a heavy plank to tamper it down. And what this is doing is actually vibrating the concrete and taking all the air out of it, making it more compact so it's going to be stronger. And then using a lighter plank like this, aluminium one, I can just kind of saw across the top. And then if any bits are kind of a bit wavy and standing proud, this will actually take them out for me. So now the screed on the top is almost dry. I've given that a little buffing over and I'm starting to lay the fire brick. The main structure around the outside is the engineering brick, of course, but this is the fire brick. It's 50 millimeters deep and I'm basically laying it directly on top of the semi-dry screed that's below. So they don't need to be bedded down, but just literally placed down nice and flat, and this will be the actual surface that you're cooking from. So these fire bricks will of course retain the heat once you've got the flame lit inside there, and of course stopping any more heat travelling through into the surface below, which is what we don't want. Now the screed below my fire brick is set and it's nice and solid, I can work on top of it. So my next stage is to now build an actual arch to create the shape of my pizza oven. So to do this, I've constructed a format like this, and the height and the width of this is 500 millimeters high by 760 millimeters wide. I'll explain this circle a little bit later on. And this is constructed of basically 3 pieces of 18 millimeters OSB board. I've cut out that arch shape. This is standing up here, this straight edge is standing up about 225, which is about the three courses of brick. I've put a little noggins in between just to stabilize it up and make it nice and strong. So this is going to be in position like that. Then I'm going to get some old pallet slats. These are going to be fixed on there all the way around, because of course they're going to hold the brickwork, and once the brickwork is all the way around, this then has to be left in place for about 10 days before you can remove it. You're probably thinking, how is he going to remove it? Well, when I've got my door on here and my chimney built up in the front, of course I'm not going to be able to remove that once the brickwork is set, so it will be burnt out. That's the only way, but we'll come back to that later. We're then going to use our fireline brick, this time a 65mm one, which is going to be butt up nice and tight onto the former. This is going to come right up on here and of course start to work its way around. We're going to have a cavity in here, and we're going to use a ceramic insulation which is designed for ovens, clay ovens and pizza ovens. This will be fitted into there, and then the outside engineering brick, which of course we're going to see the face of that along this edge and along the front here, is going to be our red engineering brick, and that will come up like this. Now what we need to do is form the 2 sides, 3 courses on that side and 3 courses on this side, all the way around to set for at least 24 hours before we start to build across our arch. Because what you don't want to happen is you start to build on one side, work your way up, and then all of a sudden that slides across there and falls out of shape. So get your 2 courses up either side and around the back, let that set, and then we can start bricking it from both sides and work our way to meet in the middle. Now this back wall here is of course the back end of the pizza oven. It's the closest one to my neighbour's fences here. As you know, we're doing a cavity wall around there which is going to have the insulation in place. But when I put my wooden former here, start building my arch around, because of the lack of access behind me, I would have struggled getting these on. So I've built this up first. I've took it up probably about another 7 or 8 courses there, which will be above the base of the pizza oven itself. And what that's going to do is act as 2 ways: help hold all the structure of it all together, help contain the heat in it like the arch will of course with the insulation, but also acting as another barrier to stop that heat penetrating through and actually making the fence, the wooden fence around us, getting too warm. So the brickwork we did yesterday, which is these sections here and here, now have dried. I put my wooden former in yesterday, so that'll hold that into place. And I've also got another piece of angle iron here. I've cut it just to bridge across my opening here, and that's going to allow me to now put my fire bricks on the top of the former here to create this arch, what I want, and it's going to bridge across and hold it and support it there for me as well. Now, to get my fire bricks started around here, we're going to use the 65mm ones, and they're going to be bedded on at this angle all the way along here. However, to hold them into position, I've had to cut a couple of the bricks right down the center there on an angle, at a 45-degree angle. Now these are the 50mm fire bricks, these ones down here that are used for the base of it. So I've cut them, and what they do is they will hold like this. They'll be bedded in place, and then the bricks will start to go on them, and that'll act as a bit of a wedge really. It'll hold it nice into position and take this weight, and then of course I can start to bond my bricks all the way across here as I go. Now I'm going to be using a Fireline pre-mixed mortar for these bricks going across here, because it's going to be quite a thin joint on there. However, on this area here, I use the fire cement and mix that in with my mortar mix myself, because of course we've got 10 and 15mm beds there holding that into position. So I'm going to start by fixing this down, making sure it's level, just with a little bit of the pre-mixed mortar underneath. We'll take it up a little bit, and that gives me an opening there of about 300mm, which is about the top of my door height as well. I'll cut this with the bolster and a lump hammer. There we go. Now I've mixed up a nice lean mortar with the fire cement in it, just to infill my gap there, as opposed to using the pre-mixed fire mortar, just so I can make it a little bit thicker and build it up there. I'm trying to make it nice and smooth on that one edge, because when that former is out, when it's burnt out, that's going to be sealed there, you see, on that end, and of course it will hold my second brick in there then when we're forming this arch. So that's now 5 courses of fire bricks standing up on its end here, bedded into place. I've pointed up the back of them there, and I'm just going to leave them to set a little bit more before I wedge my 2 final pieces in there. They've got to be spliced and wedged in there to create the strength. Now I'm going to turn my focus onto where I'm going to set the actual oven door itself. So it's going to be round about this position here. I'm going to bed 1 more fire brick to close this area off, and then I'm going to start to return my corner. So I'm just going to bed a half in here, and then start to return that this way with the red bricks, like that, and then step that in, or return that corner, should I say, into here and into here, and then a 3/4 cut into there, and bring myself up to there. That'll be a kind of a closure of this area here, and then it'll allow me to sit my gatherer then on the top of the door, on the top of here and the top of these 2 side bricks, which will give me a gap in there where I can set my flue and take out any smoke. So now these 2 I'm bedding on, and I'm just starting to step them in a little bit, and it'll create a little bit of a draw here for me. Okay, so now this last top two pieces, I'm cutting some, there's a shape like this for a little angle on it. And all you need to do is put a full brick here and mark it either side with your pencil, and then grind it down and create that shape. So I'm going to place that in here, and that'll wedge in nice and tight. And I'm putting 3 of them in, one at the front, one at the back, and one here in the center. And then we will place some full ones in like this, butt up against that, with one with a little slither in, which again will be glued into this one, and that'll tie into that full brick on here. It really is a good job. Nobody actually sees this inside, of course, because it gets buried by the insulation and then the second skin, because it is rather quite messy, to say the least. Piece here to slide in. So I'm just going to wet this fire line brick. This isn't quite completely dry yet. I've only done it today, but it is starting to cure. And of course the fire mortar dries quite a bit quicker. So it is feeling nice and stiff, but not completely cured. And then I'm going to do a layer of sand and cement on top, like a render. And I'm just going to slap it on the top like this. When I was pointing the ends of it, I dug my trowel in a little bit just to make a little lip along them edges, and it'll help this render actually stick to it. And I'm just lightly going up and down on it, spreading it in, not too thick, just about 20 millimeters thick. This is another lean sand and cement mix with the fire cement in it, and it's got a little bit of building sand, probably about 1 bucket of building sand, 2 buckets of sharp sand, and then 1 bucket of the fire cement. So it will go off quite quickly on me. And I've put a little layer of chicken wire in there just to reinforce it that little bit more. I'm just putting a lot of pressure on this, and I'm kind of zigzagging it a little bit like just to spread it around that shape that I want. I'm just starting to bridge up above this oven door now, getting these bit of an awkward cuts in place. and starting to form the outside edge of my arch on here. And you can probably see I've cut away some of the insulation just across there, pointed it all up, and these bricks, the fire bricks, as I've been building up on the inside, I've been stepping them in a little bit just to create a chimney stack in there, and that draws any smoke and unwanted heat then up the top and straight through, where the gatherer is going to be sat along the top of there. And then of course the brickwork will come around it. I'll take my chimney up a little bit higher, and then we'll have a cap on the top of it there. So as you can see, I've placed a metal gatherer in the top here to act as a chimney basically. We've created a hole in there. As we've continued the arch around there, we've stopped with that little hole to let the heat and the smoke draw out of that. This metal gatherer sits on top. It's simply bedded on with mortar and then bricked up all the way around it. Now of course we are going to get some kind of small, relatively ugly cuts around that, but do not worry about it because visually you will see all of this arch. However, when we get this in place, once this is set, we can then form a little brick pillar which goes all the way around that to create a chimney stack technically, 3 or 4 courses high. In fact, the taller the better, because it'll draw that smoke and heat out of there, and aesthetically it'll look great too. Now that's the brickwork now complete on my archway, all the way at the front and right the way to the back. I've pointed it in here nice and tight and then give it a little brush down before it's completely dry. The next stage is we fitted the gatherer in. That's been pointed around it so it's nice and secure. I'm going to now use a 1 meter flue. Okay, this is going to be slid over the top there, slots into position. You tighten that up. Of course, check it with the spirit level whilst you tighten that, making sure it's nice and square and level. And then the next stage is to build a little brick chimney breast around there. So I'm going to get my bricks, probably cut this down into a 3/4 brick, and then start to form what will be like a little pillar, which of course a brick chimney breast around there, maybe only coming up about 3 to 4 courses on there. Point it in, make sure it's nice and tight and it holds the flue into place. And then of course the heat will drive up there, the smoke will drive up there, and when it gets to the top it will escape. Now the top of it, you are going to want one of these caps which slides down into that. That stops any rain of course coming into there, and birds or anything that might want to try and get down there when it's not in use. So that's my 4th and final course of brickwork on the chimney stack here. I'm just going to fill in some of these papes here with a little bit of the mortar, let that dry off, repoint it up, and then bag rub it down. Then the next stage is to bed some mortar on the top of here, just gently sloping it away from the actual chimney flue there, just to give it a little bit of a fall. If the rain comes on there, it'll drip off the front. Then the last final thing is the weather cap on the top. So it's been 2 weeks now since I finished the structure on my pizza oven. So it's ready to set alight for the very first time. Now I've put a little bit of cardboard in the back of it, and I've got some paper. I'm going to light this because all I want to achieve today is to burn out this wooden frame that we originally built to put in to start the first course of brickwork around. So that's some cardboard in and paper. We like that. Now, hopefully I've inspired you to build your own pizza oven. But if you're looking for more inspiration, check us out on all social media handles. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want more information about the tools I've been using, just check out our website, silverlinetools.com.